Castle, a spectacular landmark as we take the road to the Isles, to Skye, my favourite Scottish island, to see some of the most dramatic landscapes in Britain as the eagles see them. Skye is separated from the mainland by a narrow channel and was known to the Gaels as the Winged Isle because of its shape. Later the Vikings called it Cloud Island. A pretty accurate description, but today the weather is kind. By the ferry landing is Castle Mole, where, according to legend, a Norse princess extracted a toll from passing ships by spanning a chain across to the mainland. Things haven't changed. You still have to pay to get to Skye, but the rewards are great, for this is a magic island.
Take you where you've never been. The time is right, so hold on tight, and you can fly away with me. Sky high, sky high, sky dreams become reality. If your desire is reaching higher, I'll take you where you want to be. Sky high, sky high, sky high.
Below, in this now peaceful place, the Battle of Glen-Sligahan was fought in 1395. The MacLeods beat the MacDonalds and shared out the booty at the Bloody Stone before bearing the heads of their slain enemies back to Dunvegan Castle. As a change from centuries of clan carnage, the Battle of the Braes was fought near the quiet village of Camish-Chianvig, where my mother came from. In 1882, crofters' wives took up sticks and stones against 50 Glasgow policemen sent to quell a feud over grazing rights. The principal town on the island is Portree. Here, in what is now known as the Royal Hotel, Bonnie Prince Charlie bade farewell to Flora MacDonald. She had risked her life helping him to evade the Redcoats after he was defeated at Culloden. Though he had a price of £30,000 on his head, no one betrayed him. But the crown of Skye is the Cullen, a place of great beauty and a priceless heritage. These mountains always give me a feeling of the fragility of our civilization compared to their sheer scale and permanence. And for me, they're full of memories of blistering summer days and crystal clear winters. But the peaks can sulk in the clouds for weeks on end, and it can rain as if never to stop. The last of the winter's snow, and spring is just around the corner. An excellent time to visit Skye. There are two main ranges on the island, the Red Cullen and these, the Black Cullen, the most precipitous mountains in the British Isles. They form a 7-mile razor-edged horseshoe of volcanic gabbro, and geologically they are the youngest mountains in the country. Nestling in the heart of the range is Loch Carrusk, like a jewel in a crown. Its name in Gaelic means Corrie of the Waters. Approaching Loch Carus from the sea up Loch Scavaig, as the day trippers do in small boatloads. It's the only way into the heart of the Cullen that doesn't involve climbing or a long hike, unless you hire a helicopter, of course. After the earth-shaking upheaval that created the mass of the Cullen, the mountains were shaped by the ice ages. And over 10,000 years ago, this huge corrie was gouged out by glaciers, so powerful that the bottom of the loch is below sea level. Carrusk is a place to get away from it all, except perhaps rain and midges, the hungry local inhabitants that rise in clouds from the heather on summer evenings. Human presence in these great empty landscapes is limited to a few colourful dots. Even the efforts of settled crofting seem only to scratch the earth in cultivated strips and the old lazy beds that use seaweed to enrich the thin acid soil. Near the Cullen, man's mark on the land is largely confined to a narrow coastal fringe under Sgurn and Gillian, the peak of the young men, and across the glen, the weathered granite cones of the Red Cullen. Let's now continue our journey north beyond Portree to Store, where there is some stunning rock architecture.
Come with me beyond the sea. I'll take you where you've never been. The time is right, so hold on tight. Then you can fly away with me. Sky high, sky high, sky within this land of fantasy, where dreams become reality. If your desire is reaching higher, I'll take you where you want to be. Sky high, sky high, sky high. I'll take you there, I'll take you there. I'll show you things beyond compare, where dreams become reality. I'll take you where you want to be. Sky high, sky high, sky somewhere in your reverie, there's magic that you long to see, and in a shroud of misty cloud lies sweet elusive mystery. Sky high, sky high, sky high. Somewhere in your reverie, there's magic that you long to see. The time is right, so hold on tight, and you can fly away with me. I'll take you there, I'll take you there. I'll show you things beyond compare, where dreams become reality. I'll take you where you want to be. Sky high, sky high, sky high.
Kilt Rock, a well-named feature of basaltic columns and sky's northerly shores. Along the coast stands one more remnant of the long feuding of the MacLeods and the MacDonalds. Duntullum Castle was held by both clans at times. King James V had bed and breakfast here in 1540 and was impressed with the place. It is said to be haunted by the drunken ghosts of a chief called Donald Gorm and his convivial pals. Dawn greets a solitary climber heading for the High Cuillin. His objective is the Kirch, which means breast, one of Skye's most famous landmarks. Away from the peaks in the southern, greener end of the island lies the heartland of one of the two great clans who dominated Skye, the MacDonalds of Sleat. And here the remains of Armadale Castle. Modern archers practice this ancient craft, once used for real by a warrior queen at nearby Dunskeith, the oldest MacDonald castle. This is a place steeped in history, violent history usually. Beyond the Black Cuillin rising from the cloud are the peaks on the island of Rum. It's all worthwhile for those who set off at sunrise on the long haul to the top. For me at least, this is the finest ridge walk in Britain, but I don't recommend it to those who suffer from vertigo. Below is where the McCaskills lived for as long as the MacLeods occupied Dunvegan. Many famous men had such humble beginnings. Here, for example, Major General Sir John McCaskill, Governor of Mauritius. Nearby is an inland loch where the McCaskills took their boats or berlins for shelter. By the channel leading to the sea are the ruins of a vitrified dun. A property agent might describe the view as outstanding, unobstructed to the islands of Rum, Canna and the Outer Hebrides. This is the breast I mentioned, the Kirch, looking down on the vast amphitheatre of Corrylegan. Sgurr Alistair on the left is the highest peak on Skye. It is named after Sheriff Nicholson of Portree, who first climbed it in 1873. The peaks were first properly explored in the great rush of climbing enthusiasm late in the 19th century. The second highest point on this lofty island is the inaccessible pinnacle of Sgurr Jerrig. At least it was inaccessible until it was first climbed by the agile brothers Pilkington in 1880. The Quirang at the north end of the island is also a place of pinnacles, but like those of Storr, they're as crumbly as rock cake and not for climbing. It is a wonderland of rock needles, towers and dark crannies, where you might expect to find elves and fairies. No, it's not a putting green. It's known as the Table, and to celebrate the end of the First World War, a game of shinty was played up here among the pinnacles. Shinty often seems like a cross between hockey and clan warfare, which it appears to have replaced as a Highland recreation. The old bloodletting finally came to an end in 1601 in a campaign known as the War of the One-Eyed Woman. A MacLeod chief took to wife a MacDonald woman who later lost an eye in an accident. The chief tired of her and sent her back to her clansmen riding on a one-eyed horse led by a one-eyed groom with a one-eyed dog. The inevitable happened, and here in Corrinacrease the MacLeods and MacDonalds hacked it out bloodily for the last time below the Black Cuillin. Up on the main Cuillin Ridge, you can see why people like to talk of the magic of Skye. There's surely something mystical about this island. It is everything, especially on a day such as this. The jagged summit of Sgurr Gillian, the first peak at the north end of the Cuillin Ridge. Traversing the ridge is a strenuous business, with 10,000 feet of ascent. It was first completed in a day in 1939. Bastia, a narrow section of the ridge with long drops on each side, a bit like walking a rocky tightrope. Though the Cuillin can have rain to rival a monsoon, the water rushes off the steep rocks, and on balmy days like this, drinking water can be a problem unless you carry it with you. The nearest pool or trickle could be 1,000 feet below. In winter, traversing the ridge is a much more serious undertaking, but is probably the most exciting mountain expedition in Britain. After the excitements of the Cuillin Ridge, we've often gone west to take in the peace and the five-star scenery around Loch Bracadale. Among its islands, caves and arches, time surely stands still. Neast Point in MacLeod country is the most westerly headland on Skye. Usually a wild and windy place with Atlantic storms sweeping in over the Outer Hebrides and the Minch, lifting the salt spray in clouds so that you can feel it and taste it standing on the cliff tops. MacLeod's maidens are supposed to be the wife and daughters of a MacLeod chief who perished in a storm on a voyage from the Outer Hebrides. Down there, the coral sands of Dunvegan. I discovered that they're not really formed from coral, but from an encrusting seaweed which grows just offshore, and broken pieces get washed up by the sea. This is a busy day for a Skye beach. The McCrimmon family were pipers to the MacLeods of Dunvegan, and I'm sure their music had much to celebrate and lament in the violent years. In 1578, the congregation of MacLeods here at Trumpin Church were burned to death by MacDonalds from Uist. Members of the MacLeod clan at Dunvegan Castle unfurled the fairy flag, which has magical powers, and rushed to the scene of the crime to defeat the MacDonalds. On this island on Loch Dunvegan are these pristine walls of black houses, the occupants long since exiled to the New World from their island paradise. No one who has been here can ever forget this breathtaking, enchanted island.
It is said when the fairy flag flies, silver herring return to the loch with the tide, and victory will follow. The MacLeod battle castles in ruins from a time long since gone, lonely crops standing empty and bare, inaccessible pinnacles reach for the sky where few people venture.
Where better to start our journey than at the very northwest of Scotland, Here, the Clomore Cliffs, over 800 feet high, present a solid barrier to the great gales from the Pentland Firth. According to legend, above the cliffs on the desolate moorland lives a terrible monster which no one has lived to describe, though one man is reputed to have seen its shadow on the hillside. It has 2 heads. This is a wild part of Scotland. One of the best known mountains is Foinaven, a bare peak of white Cambrian quartzite. The rivers of Sutherland and its multitude of lochs offer excellent fishing, and dedicated anglers troop north every year to try their luck. At least the midges are guaranteed a meal. To get to the northwestern tip of Scotland, Cape Wrath, you must cross the Kyle of Durness by ferryboat, and a minibus on the other side takes you on to the lighthouse. The Vikings dominated this area for 500 years, so the landscape bears a mixture of Gaelic and Norse place names. Near the village of Durness, which is Norse for Deer Point, is the church of Balnakeil, where the poet Rob Donn is buried. The building dates from 1619, but this was a place of worship long before that. Near Durness are the Maidens, graceful ladies who have so far resisted the attention of the waves. It's a stormy place, and it doesn't need a Met man to tell you where the prevailing wind comes from. Smoo Cave is a fine bit of subterranean architecture with a legacy of legends. One concerns Lord Ree, who was supposed to have met the devil on his travels. The devil pursued him home to Sutherland and planned to waylay the good Lord when he visited Smoo Cave. Lord Ree's dog ran ahead but came rushing out, howling and hairless. Providentially, a cock crowed, which made the devil and his attendant witches powerless. In a panic to escape, the devil blew holes in the roof, which we can see today. Now we go westwards along this magnificent deserted coast to Cape Wrath. The only inhabitants are the seabirds. Northwards, there is no land between here and the North Pole. A great rock buttress props up Cape Wrath. Although the storms here can be angry enough, the name does not refer to bad weather. The name Wrath is a corruption from the Norse, meaning turning point. It was at this cape that the Vikings turned their longships south to sail down the west coast of Scotland. The lighthouse has been a vital mark to countless mariners, standing on its cliff top 400 feet above the sea since 1828. Its light can be seen for 27 miles. This area was once home to wolves and sea eagles. The wolves have probably gone for good, but the sea eagle is being reintroduced to Scotland from Norway, and it may return again to these cliffs. We now go down the coast to the village of Scowry, its houses scattered in an impressive rock garden. Nothing much happens here except perhaps a discussion on the biggest fish caught that day in any of the scores of lochs in the surrounding hills. Nearby is the even smaller village or clachan of Tarbet, notable mainly as the port of embarkation for the Island of Handa, whose cliffs are home to almost 100,000 seabirds. One of the jewels of Scotland's western seaboard, the Island of Handa. For me, in the spring when the seabirds are nesting, it is one of the wonders of the world. During the Middle Ages, the island was used as a secure burial ground, for Sutherland was plagued by wolves. It is now a bird sanctuary and uninhabited, but in 1885, 12 families lived here, ruled by their own Queen and Parliament. The Queen was the oldest widow on the island. At that time, her people existed on a diet mainly of potatoes, eggs, and seabirds. This Jacob's sheep is a relative newcomer to the island. An island blessed with wall-to-wall pink sea thrift. The northern cliffs are 350 feet high, battered for most of the year by Atlantic storms. Fish and the horizontal strata of the rock are what attract the seabirds to Handa. The galleried cliffs provide abundant nesting ledges. But the sea is doing its endless work on the rose-red Torridonian sandstone, and in places has tunneled deep into the island. One of the products of the undermining action of the waves is the Great Stack of Handa, home to thousands of seabirds. The first crossing to the top, over the narrow gap on the left, was made by Donald MacDonald from the Island of Lewis in 1876. He spanned a rope across the bay and tensioned it over the top of the stack. He then crossed hand over hand to destroy a colony of greater black-backed gulls, which were killing many birds the islanders needed for food. Today it is planned to emulate the hard man from Lewis by crossing both gaps. However it looks, it's very strenuous, and the body weight of mountaineer Dr. Susan Richards will put a tremendous strain on the rope over the first span of 300 feet.
Handa nestles peacefully in in the early morning light, hoping that his nets are full when he returns at night. Sometimes he thinks of days gone by when Handa life did thrive, and what a man has got to do sometimes to stay alive. They pulled themselves across the rope as the northerlies did blow. Relentlessly the waves crashed in, 300 feet below. They pulled themselves across the rope as the northerlies did blow. Relentlessly the waves crashed in, 300 feet below.
Old Shore Moor is a village with a view towards Canada. It has an air of tranquility befitting a Buddhist monastery. For centuries, peat has been the main source of fuel, and it still is today. There is something therapeutic about cutting and stacking peat. I'm sure it could be used as a treatment for the stresses of modern life. This coast is sprinkled with little islands, wonderful waters for messing about in boats among the seals and the porpoises, at least when the weather's fine. And aboard a boat you might have a better chance of keeping your feet dry than tramping inland, where the mountains of Sutherland rise from a mass of soddy, peaty bogland. In the distance, two great peaks of the northwest, Foinavan and Arkle. We'll see more of them later. Down here at the coast is the beach at Sandwood Bay, one of the finest anywhere, with everything except sea at the right temperature. There's plenty of privacy, for you can't drive to it. You have to walk a few miles from where the road runs out. Here, near the south end of Sandwood Bay, a local shepherd called Sandy Gunn was gathering his sheep. He went onto the beach, and there, on a rock, he saw a mermaid not 50 feet away. His collie was terrified, but not Sandy, so the story goes, and he told the tale with relish for many years. a sandstone lighthouse, the 200-foot sea stack of Ambuchel, the herdsman, stands at the south end of Sandwood Bay. The first ascent of this stack was made by my friend Dr. Tom Petty, who enlisted the aid of a local painter's ladder to cross to it at low tide. It's not the work of a mad local painter you see on the rock, but the trademark of Fulmers, the residents of Ambuchel. They are not keen on human visitors, and their hostility adds to the difficulties of a climb with its prickly overhangs. Besides, the whole expedition is under time pressure, for the tide is constantly threatening to cut off your retreat. This area of rock with scattered crumbs of soil near the fishing port of Kinlochbervie is well named the Rough Quarter. Here the sea is usually gentler and always richer than the stony land. The magnificent sculptured corries of Foinaman. This is superb walking country. On these bare mountains you are above both the bogs and the midges. Across the loch are the peaks of the Quinag Massif. We are now at the southerly end of our travels at Carlskew. Loch Glencool and beyond the stack of Glencool seen from Kylestrom Bridge. I don't go a bundle on modern bridges, but this is an exception. Somehow or other it seems to complement the stunning scenery around Carlskew, as well as providing a vital link to the north. There used to be a ferry here, but the only good thing about it was that it was free. This furthest northwest corner of Scotland seems to be too distant to be swamped by tourism, for it never gets busy. For most travellers, doing Scotland means stopping at Inverness, or perhaps Ullapool for the more daring, and that's well south of the wild, lonely places we have seen. The shapes of this land and the ever-present voice of the sea have been bypassed by time, leaving this unique sanctuary, an inheritance we should treasure.
Like the movement of sun and tide, memories unfolding ridge by ridge and falling into the sands of time. It seems like yesterday, you and I on Sandwood Bay, holding your hand in mine, walking over the sands of time. You ripple through my mind like the movement of sun and tide, memories unfolding ridge by ridge and falling into the sands of time. I watched as you sailed away, all alone on Sandwood Bay, with no reason and no rhyme, drifting into